They vanished without a trace, missing Nazi war treasures. As Germany collapsed, its fascist masters tried to hide $7.5 billion in gold and thousands of priceless stolen masterpieces. Much of the hoard has never been recovered, although, astonishingly, some was found in a small Texas town in 1990. Bombs away. Doors closing. "Let's get the hell out of here," cried a young U.S. Air Force bombardier on February 3, 1945, as 950 bombers unleashed 2,265 tons of explosives on Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. This bombardment, one of the heaviest of World War II, killed about 2,000, left another 120,000 homeless, and leveled whole districts. Many important government buildings, including Adolf Hitler's headquarters, were razed or severely damaged. On this fateful Saturday, a working day, 5,000 employees of the Nazis' principal bank, the monumental turn-of-the-century Reichsbank, cowered deep in a basement bunker as 21 separate payloads pounded the imposing edifice, finally demolishing it. When the horrific assault was over, all Reichsbank workers and their world-famous president, Dr. Walther Funk, had survived. But the devastation of the warrior nation's financial nerve center set in motion a bizarre series of events that would produce one of history's most intriguing unsolved mysteries. Ostensibly, Germany's wealth would be spirited away for safekeeping as the Allied forces drove across the country. In fact, greedy officials would try to skim off millions for themselves, hiding bullion and currency so well that it has never been found. The Reichsbank vaults held the major part of Nazi Germany's gold reserves, estimated to be worth about $7.5 billion by today's standards, including about $1.5 billion in Italian gold. A secret stash of billions. One glance at the rubble and smoldering fires was sufficient for Dr. Funk. He immediately determined to transfer top bank officials to other towns to run the Reichsbank. And he ordered gold and monetary reserves shipped to a huge potassium mine 200 miles southwest of the capital. The isolated Kaiserota mine, 30 miles from the nearest town of any size, offered a hiding place half a mile below ground. There were 5 separate entrances to its 30 miles of underground passages. The secret transfer of the bulk of Nazi resources, about 100 tons of gold and 1,000 sacks of paper. Marx required 13 railway cars. Within only 7 weeks, however, the U.S. Third Army under General George S. Patton was advancing toward the area. Incredibly, the Easter holiday made it impossible to find enough trains to rescue the gold. But Reichsbank representatives were able to retrieve 450 sacks of paper money. On April 4th, the Americans arrived. 2 days later, a pair of MPs driving along a country road encountered 2 French women displaced persons and, following orders to restrict civilian movement, escorted them back to the town of Merkers. As they passed the Kaiserota, one woman said, "That's the mine where the gold bullion is kept." On April 7th, U.S. officers took an elevator 2,100 feet down into a cave hewn from salt rock and found 1 billion Reichsmarks in the 550 bags left behind. After dynamiting the steel door to room No. 8, they discovered more than 7,000 numbered bags in a room 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 12 feet high. The hoard included 8,527 gold bars, gold coins from France, Switzerland, and the United States, and still more stacks of paper money. Gold and silver plate smashed flat for easier storage was packed in boxes and trunks. There were suitcases filled with diamonds, pearls, and other precious stones robbed from death camp victims, along with sacks stuffed with gold dental bridges and fillings. Added to minor amounts of money from Britain, Norway, Turkey, Spain, and Portugal, the entire cache proved to be one of the richest deposits anywhere in the world at that time. It represented an astonishing 93.17% of Germany's entire financial reserves as the war reached its end. But that was not all. In other tunnels webbing through the soft rock, investigators found 400 tons of art, including paintings from 15 German museums, and important books from the Goethe collection in Weimar. Under heavy guard, the treasures of the mines were placed in 11,750 containers and loaded onto 30 to 10-ton trucks for transport to Frankfurt, where they were stored in the vaults of the Reichsbank branch there. Despite persistent rumors about the disappearance of one truck in the convoy, none of the gold or art was lost in transit. A treasure vanishes. To Hitler's propaganda chief, Joseph Goebbels, it was Funk's criminal dereliction of duty that had put the nation's treasures in Allied hands. But the Führer approved an attempt to evacuate what was left. In fact, the plan originated with Hitler's personal security officer, a police colonel named Friedrich Joseph Rauch. Following the lead of the Gestapo, which had already started transferring its gold, jewels, art, and paper currency to mines, lakes, and other hiding places throughout the mountains of southern Bavaria and northern Austria, Colonel Rauch suggested that the 6.83% of official gold reserves remaining in the Reichsbank be sent to Bavaria for safekeeping. The Reichsbank gold bars and coins to be sent would probably be worth about $150 million today. During the next few months, Allied bombing disrupted communications, and individual scheming created a complicated scenario that has never been satisfactorily explained. Currency was put aboard to trains, while a truck convoy was ready to transport gold bullion and coins. Owing to the chaos of a collapsing empire, the trains took 2 weeks to make the 500-mile journey south to Munich. Along the way, Dr. Funk's colleague Hans Alfred von Rosenberg-Lipinski had bags of paper currency offloaded and transferred to the truck convoy. Eventually, the trucks carried the money, gold coins, gold bars, and foreign exchange to a tiny town in the Bavarian Alps, while the trains made it to Munich. Meanwhile, Rosenberg-Lipinski retained 1 sack of foreign currency and 5 small boxes for certain reasons. What happened to them is unknown, but given the impending disaster for Nazi Germany, it seems likely the bank official was preparing for a comfortable future. Others followed his example. The treasure-laden trucks drove through the heavily forested Karwendel Mountains to an infantry training establishment, while harried officers debated where to hide the nation's dwindling treasure. It seems that the Reichsbank's Emil Janishevsky took to gold bars worth almost $500,000 today. Someone unable to light a fire in a stove in the school's officers' mess found the bars blocking the flue. The aging, highly regarded Janishevsky committed suicide. By the time of this discovery, the rest of the gold cache had been buried in watertight holes near an isolated alpine chalet known as the Forest House. The paper currency had been divided into 3 caches and buried on 3 different peaks. Subsequently, the 2 recovered gold bars and a great deal of currency wound up in the care of a certain Karl Jacob, a local functionary. They were never seen again. Soon Dr. Funk and other high Nazi officials were in Allied custody, but none confessed to knowing where the missing gold reserves were hidden. Eventually, the U.S. military recovered about $14 million worth of Reichsbank gold and some $41 million of German gold from other government agencies, but the Forest House treasure could not be found. For 4 years, American investigators tried diligently to solve the mystery, but they eventually had to report that approximately $3.5 million, $46.5 million today in gold and about $2 million, $12 million Alien today in paper money had vanished without a trace. The plunder of the victors. The Germans were not alone in taking advantage of the surprising opportunities afforded by the wide dispersal of gold cash and irreplaceable art. To the horror of officers like General Patton, who was scrupulous in dealing with all Nazi treasure and who said, "I don't want anybody ever to say that son Yuvovich Patton had stolen any part of it," a disturbing number of American soldiers had sticky fingers. In about 300 known cases, valuable artworks were illegally taken back to the United States. The culprits were prosecuted for taking stolen property and either jailed or given dishonorable discharges from the service. Then, in 1990, the world was shocked to learn that German art treasures, including one of the most valuable and historically significant works of medieval art still in existence, were unaccountably being offered for sale by the heirs of an obscure veteran from a small farm town in Texas. Until his death in 1980, orchid fancier and hardware store owner Joe T. Meter had reportedly kept a priceless 9th-century manuscript of the Four Gospels wrapped in a blanket, frequently showing it to friends and relatives in his hometown of WWII, about 65 miles north of Dallas. bound in finely worked silver and gold. The illuminated, illustrated 1,100-year-old manuscript came from a church in Quedlinburg, Germany. Suddenly, it was sold in Switzerland for a finder's fee, some would call it ransom of $3 million. Absolutely a national treasure, commented the Secretary General of West Germany's Cultural Foundation of the States. Estimated to be worth up to $30 million, the manuscript is 600 years older than the Gutenberg Bible. It was written in gold for the imperial court and donated to the cloister in the medieval castle town late in the 10th century, perhaps by Emperor Otto III and his sister Adelaide. Abbess of the convent. Nieder's trove, it turned out, also included a 1513 manuscript with an ornamental gold and silver binding, and a 9th or 10th century reliquary decorated with gold, silver, and precious stones. Other objects included heart-shaped pieces and one in the form of a plate, but the most valuable was a rock crystal flask shaped like a bishop's head and thought to contain a lock of hair from Mary, the mother of Jesus. There were also gold and silver crucifixes, a 12th century comb of Henry I, and numerous other art objects with important historical and religious significance. The treasures had been taken from the Quedlinburg church and hidden in a mine shaft for safekeeping as Allied forces moved toward the area in the closing days of World War II. In April 1945, according to U.S. Army records, officials who inventoried the cache found all pieces intact and present. Some days afterward, however, it was discovered that several of the art objects had disappeared. Although an investigation was launched immediately and reports continued to be filed for the following 3 years, no clues were ever obtained. When Germany was divided in 1949, it became a crime for any East German to make contact with the West. So the church was unable to pursue the theft. Apparently, neither then a lieutenant in the army took the objects and shipped them back to the United States, successfully carrying off one of the largest art thefts of the 20th century. A frustrated art teacher who was forced by personal circumstances to work in his family's hardware store. He once told a friend he was torn between feeling guilty and deeply enjoying the beauty of the priceless masterworks. After Meter's death, when his heirs started to offer Quedlinburg objects on the market, such United States agencies as the IRS and the FBI began investigating. After months of legal maneuvers, the heirs agreed to relinquish the entire treasure for a total payment of $2.75 million, $1 million more than the down payment already received for the Gospels. Although Germany said the case was amicably resolved, many criticized the settlement. A room disappears. Still unknown today is the fate of the remarkable amber room of the Tsars, an entire room made from ornately carved amber. Originally owned by King Frederick William I of Prussia, it was given in 1716 to his Russian ally, Tsar Peter the Great, who had been struck by the inexpressible charm of the lustrous furnishings. Peter installed this lavish gift in a palace outside St. Petersburg, expanding it to banquet hall size and adding 24 mirrors and a mother-of-pearl floor. 2 centuries later, during their World War II invasion of Russia, the Germans reclaimed the gift and took it home for reconstruction in Königsberg Castle. Briefly on display to the public, it was crated and taken down to the cellars before the town was destroyed by British bombs in August 1944. After the war, no trace of the unique treasure was found in the bombed-out castle cellars. Rumors abounded that the Nazis had spirited away the room on a ship sunk by a Soviet submarine. Finally, testimony in 1959 seemed to indicate that the amber room had been hidden in a salt mine used to store other works of art. When investigators neared the supposed hiding place, however, a mysterious explosion occurred, flooding the mine shaft and making salvage impossible. Stolen, the artistic legacy of Europe. The amazing find in the Kaiserota mine brought a visit from Allied Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower and 4 of his generals, including George Patton. When this irrepressible officer recalled his first sight of the priceless oil paintings, he wrote, "The ones I saw were worth, in my opinion, $2.50, and were the type normally seen in bars in America." Others took a different view, for the collection included masterpieces by Renoir, Titian, Raphael, Rembrandt, Dürer, Van Dyck, and Monet. Even these artistic landmarks were outshone by Germany's single most valuable work of art, the famed 3,000-year-old portrait bust of ancient Egypt's beautiful Queen Nefertiti. Still more treasures were found in other mines nearby. Nazi warlords had accumulated vast holdings of art from private citizens and the museums of conquered countries. Many works were apparently destroyed during the wartime conflagration, but a number of others were restored to their rightful owners, thanks to the assiduous efforts of curatorial teams assigned to work with the U.S. Departments of State and Defense. Still, thousands have never been found, and one recent compilation in Munich lists some 4,000 European paintings as missing. The theft of a defeated enemy's national art treasures is a familiar theme throughout history, recorded as early as the annals of the armies of Assyria, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, continuing down through the campaigns of Napoleon and Britain's colonial conquests. The imposing red porphyry pillars of Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, for example, were stolen from the Persepolis of the Persians by conquering Romans. The famous for horses that reared atop St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice before they were removed to protect them from pollution were booty from ancient Constantinople. In 1907, the Hague Land Warfare Convention expressly permitted the salvaging of art treasures from all battle zones. But rapacious Nazi officials went much further, taking millions of dollars worth of art from subjugated countries. Some were exhibited in German museums, but others were stored secretly or displayed in the opulent homes of luxury-loving members of Hitler's entourage. Special confiscation units included the extremely efficient Bild- and Kunstfine Arts, which had 350 librarians, archivists, and art historians. It was their task to register and catalog the invaluable loot, carefully crate it for damage-free shipment, and, in many cases, find hiding places as the Third Reich began to crumble. It is quite possible, according to experts, that some missing art will never be found because much of the documentation of caches was lost or destroyed during the final days of World War II fighting. Bombs away. Doors closing. Let's get the hell out of here.